everybody. I think we all know that with the Trump administration, there's always a catalog of truly, truly, truly terrible people. Many of them deserve to be on the enemies list. I mean, over and over again. Many of them are already Hall of Famers on the enemies list. But this week, the enemies list is going to go back to a person we've never featured here before, but I've written about, talked about, mocked, ridiculed, insulted, derided, belittled, and otherwise put in his place, Stephen Miller. Here's the weird thing about Stephen Miller. People generally look at a guy from Santa Monica, California, and ask themselves, how did he become the closest thing, and I do not use this word with any sense of exaggeration, to a Nazi ideologue in America? They look at this guy and say, how did somebody from a upper middle class family, a prosperous family, become so weird and effed up and radicalized? He has become, at the age of 39, so filled with a seething, constant, fervid hatred, particularly of Hispanic people, and an extraordinarily virulent hatred of immigrants, legal and otherwise, to this country. Stephen Miller is the broken and hollowed out shell of a human being when he doesn't have anything else but immigration to talk about. There's nothing else in his mind or his heart or his head other than this like raging, irrational level of pure hatred. I knew of him a little bit when he worked for Jeff Sessions, when Jeff was still in the U.S. Senate before he became EAG. I knew of him. I'd heard of him a couple of times, like this weird fucking guy who works for Jeff Sessions. He's the immigrant weirdo. He's the guy who's crazy about immigration. Someday, I would love to find the backstory, the supervillain origin story of Stephen Miller, because there is something so broken and fucked up about this guy. It defies reason. It defies rationality, just how full of hate Stephen Miller is. And in this White House, in the first White House, Stephen Miller had some power. Trump, in the first administration, believed that immigration was the thing that won the election for him. Still kind of believes that. And Stephen Miller is now rising in power. So I think it's important we go back and look at Stephen Miller for a moment about why he is a particularly dangerous choice for national security advisor, first off. And I can rattle those off for you in about 1 second. One, he has no experience whatsoever in national security matters. He does not know, as the kids say, shit about fuck when it comes to national security. He knows nothing in this area whatsoever. It would be like saying, hey, Rick, we'd like you to write a book about the history of toboggans. Stephen Miller has a very good shot of becoming national security advisor. Trump wants the most fanatic and smallest circle he can get. It's why Marco Rubio is a poor struggling Hispanic dad with 4 jobs. It's why the Army Secretary is also the head of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. I don't get it either. But the idea that Stephen Miller is about to ascend to a job that gives him access to the most sensitive and classified information available in the United States government, to become the singular national security counselor to the President of the United States, is so unbelievably risible. It's laughable. No serious person would put him in that job. So of course Trump is considering. Now the other candidates were in discussion initially have all sort of gone to Miller and said, "No, please, sir. I won't take this job if offered if you want it." That includes the Dragon of Budapest, Seb Gorka, who really wanted it. Who wanted it so bad. He wanted it like nobody's business. A couple of these other like Fox News generals wanted it, didn't get it. Miller is right now the deputy chief of staff of the White House. He is the person, if Susie Wiles is the operational brain, Stephen Miller is the id. He's the guy who goes to Trump and says, "The darkness is calling you, sir." The proverbial Edgar Allan Poe imp of the perverse is sitting on his shoulder, and it looks like Stephen Miller. If you see Trump doing something particularly cruel or shitty or horrible or inhuman, a lot of it comes from Trump. But Stephen Miller's on his shoulder saying, "Do it, own him, do it, do it." Do it. But Miller has a very good chance of getting this job. It will put the country in danger. It will alienate our allies further because Stephen Miller, and I'm not putting too fine a point on this, once again, he is as close as we have in America to a modern day Nazi ideologue. He is a racial supremacist. He is filled with animus toward anyone. And by the way, Stephen, I just want to point out, you would not have lasted long in Nazi Germany. But foreign counterparts, and by the way, the National Security Advisor has to deal with their foreign counterparts around the world all the time. All the time. They're not going to want to deal with this guy. They're going to look at him and say, he's insane. He's a vile racist. He's a weirdo. And it's true. He is all those things. But he's also vastly underqualified. I've been thinking about Miller a lot today. I've been thinking about the fact that this guy is rising in power, in part because Trump understands something at a really deep level. In the first Trump administration, in the first Trump campaign, there was a kind of carnival merriment about it. It's what they were always trying to recapture in these rallies, the YMCA, the dancing. That's all gone now. It's all gone. We're snatching students off the street. We're sending 4-year-olds with cancer and deporting them. using the DOJ to go after law firms that Trump doesn't like. We're increasingly talking about warrantless searches of people's homes in case you are harboring any illegal aliens, or in case the neighborhood snitch tells the government you're harboring illegal aliens. We're talking about a dead end, socially, ideologically, politically, morally, philosophically. We're talking about a dead end because Trump doesn't have anything else now. He doesn't have anything else that's a possibility now for him. He has to keep the hate machine running. He has to keep the base happy. He screwed up so badly. Absolutely train wrecked his administration when it came to the tariffs. He absolutely train wrecked his administration when it came to that moment where he could have said, you know what, Biden economy's it's not too shabby. I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm not going to praise him, but it's not too shabby. I'll tell you what, why don't we just shut our fucking mouths and let things roll? Because he could have let things roll, but he wouldn't, and he couldn't. So he does this tariff plan, the most absurd, destructive we've talked about it 100 times. And even though it was only at the very, very end of the first quarter that the tariff plans started to kick in, the economy took a hit, a big one. The markets took a hit, a big one. The pain is only starting, and Trump knows that. He has a feral, guys, he's not a smart man, but he has a feral understanding of what danger is for him, politically and otherwise. And he knows he's in danger. And so I think we're going to see is a greater and greater and greater transition into the Stephen Miller lane of Trump. Now, Miller will try to redefine the National Security Advisor's job as running all the anti-immigration efforts because a lot of people around Trump, including J.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, a lot of the nativists and the hyperpopulists and the white nats, then they're in there. They believe that the only meaningful security threat is immigration. They believe that because, like Stephen Miller, they are folks who had a great uptake of two ideas. I'll talk about one in a second. But the first is the Great Replacement Theory. You've heard about this. This is Tucker Carlson's big hobby horse. The Great Replacement Theory is that immigrants are browning your country. They are coming here in a deliberate international conspiracy run by the Jews, of course. That's their pretense of what it is. And they're outbreeding white people. Folks in Africa and folks in Latin America and folks in the Muslim world are having more babies than Americans and folks in first world countries. Been true for a while. Somehow or another, when women discovered that birth control was available and education and the alterations of society, whether they're good or bad, or do you think that they are universally good or universally bad or somewhere in between, have led to lower birth rates. We do have a crashing international population crash coming at us where the world is about to shrink in the next 100 years dramatically. We're going to lose 2 to 3 billion people in our population pool in the next 200 years. People are not breeding. They're not replacing the number. But the idea is, on the part of these folks, that this is a plan and a plot and a scheme against America in particular and Britain in particular. And again, this is not an argument for, uncontrolled, unchecked immigration. But these guys, and Miller in particular, they're the lead priests of this weird idea. They're the lead pushers of this weird idea. And this idea is going to become the defining idea of American national security. Not do we face off against China as a peer competitor, which if they're a peer competitor, they're kicking our ass right now. Should be a wake-up call that's much bigger than all this immigration shit that Stephen Miller's pushing. But it won't be. Are we going to allow Russia to continue to play its role of disruption and chaos and terror in the world? Are we going to face up against an emergent nuclear Iran and headlong collision in the Middle East between not only Iran and Israel, but between Iran and Saudi Arabia and all the other Gulf states? No, it's all going to get washed out. We're going to be told every day that the number one security threat is a mom crossing the southern border with her 4-year-old daughter carrying her few worldly possessions in a Hello Kitty backpack. We're going to be sold a vision that these are all perfidious rapists, cannibals, human traffickers, fentanyl dealers, etc. I know math is hard for these people, but Bondi and Miller and all these other people last week repeated that lie 100 times. Like, we have stopped enough fentanyl to kill 300 gazillion bajillion Americans.
3,400 kilos of fentanyl since you've been your last 100 days, which saved, are you ready for this, media? 258 million lives.
But they're also influenced, and Miller in particular is influenced by this book from the 1970s called Camp of the Saints. It's by a guy named Jean Raspail. And it was really a lot about post-colonial French reaction about the loss of Tunisia and Algeria and other French colonies in Africa. And Raspail posited this idea that France and Europe were going to be flooded deliberately by millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions more people than they could possibly accommodate or defend against, and that those people are going to destroy everything about those countries. It's sort of the modern text of blood and soil nationalism, and it really informs a lot whether they know it or not. I mean, for Miller, it's a conscious understanding. He's referenced the book a number of times. I've read it. I've read it. It reflects both a sort of 1970s Malthusianism and an emergent movement that became the white nationalist, replacement theory. But Miller believes this in his heart. Like I said, he's talked about it. He's praised it. He said this is like one of the guides, one of the texts. And Miller represents a part of the party, the Bannon wing, the Miller wing. They don't understand where they're going in a country that is explicitly not about blood and soil. That is the beauty of America that Stephen Miller will never understand. And again, this is not an argument you fling the doors open and everybody comes in without any qualification or screening or any of that. That's their classic logical fallacy they use. Well, you just want open borders. But this country is not about whether or not you are a white person. It's not about whether or not you are a certain religion. This infuriates Stephen Miller beyond words because he doesn't look at the Constitution for what it is. It is a propositional document in a propositional nation because we have no kings, because we have no qualification for being an American other than you are either born here or you're naturalized to become an American. It is the gift we gave the world, thousands of people every year, millions of people who came here and became America and Americans. They came here from places, and I've told this story 100 times. When my German relatives came to this country, starting in the late 1820s and 30s, they were the scum of the earth. When the Irish came here, they were the scum of the earth. When the Italians came here, they were the scum of the earth. When the Jews came here, they were the scum of the earth. When the Vietnamese came here, they were the scum of the earth. And the Koreans. And it goes on and on and on. Every time a new population comes to this country, and this is an illusion that Stephen Miller and these guys, they will say, oh, no, they keep their cultures. They're loyal to their homelands. They're only loyal to it's bullshit. First generation comes here and let's say there's a country called Fredonia. The first generation of Fredonians who come here, they still speak Fredonian. They're happy to be in America because Fredonia is not a great place. And in America, they have rights and liberties and freedoms. And in America, they have the chance to build a life where it doesn't depend on, are you in good with the ruling clique or the ruling king or the ruling warlord? And that first generation Fredonians, they love this country. They still love the old country. They kind of miss it. And their kids grow up speaking little Fredonian, maybe a lot. Maybe they still speak Fredonian at home. But their kids grow up in America and they become Americans. And their grandkids, born in America, live in America, they're part of the American culture and the fabric of this country from the first day. And I don't care if they speak Fredonian and no one else does either. And maybe they march in the annual Fredonia Day parade back home. And maybe they still wear the traditional costume once in a blue moon. Maybe they like the classic Fredonian dish made of elk meat or whatever the fuck. But Stephen Miller and these folks forget that this is a propositional country. This is the country with the door that has been open to people from around this world who want to come here and work hard and build a life and build a family and be safe in their homes. They don't just believe in deporting illegal aliens. And this is one of Stephen Miller's most pernicious and dangerous ideas. He is talking internally in the White House, and I know this from two sources in the White House. He's pushing Tom Homan and the lawyers to come up with a mass denaturalization program. I want you to process what that means. They want to take people who are currently naturalized U.S. citizens who have gone through the rigmarole, who've done the test, who've done the time, who've played by the rules, who've paid the taxes, and remove their American citizenship so they can deport them. Carolyn Levitt has said it from the podium.
President Trump said that he would be willing to have U.S. citizens deported to El Salvador with the cooperation of President Bukele. How would that work legally, and how many people would potentially be available for that operation?
So the president has discussed this idea quite a few times publicly. He's also discussed it privately. You're referring to the president's idea for American citizens to potentially be deported. The president has said if it's legal, right? If there is a legal pathway to do that, he's not sure. We are not sure if there is. It's an idea that he has simply floated and has discussed very publicly as in the effort of transparency.
Stephen Miller, I know this for a fact, is driving this in the White House. It is one of his biggest fetishes to find a way to denaturalize and remove tens of millions of naturalized U.S. citizens from this country. Now, how you do it mechanically requires a police state. And while we are in what I call just the tip police state right now, that is what it would require. It would require a full mobilization of the military, which they're working on that too. It would require a massive legal infrastructure. It would require ignoring the court orders that the courts are going to say absolutely not. That's only part of it, though. They also want to undo birthright citizenship so that children who are born in this country, if both parents are not American citizens, they're not American citizens either. That would undo 250 years of American tradition. It would undo the post-Civil War 14th Amendment considerations on this question. But they believe that if you are from somewhere else, maybe even a second or third generation person from somewhere else, who they don't like ethnically or religiously or culturally, they believe that there's something missing in this country. They believe that there's something missing from the lives of those people, even though the sons and daughters of those Fredonians, and by that I mean Dominicans and El Salvadorians and Hondurans and Guatemalans and Haitians and Mexicans and Canadians and every other goddamn country that ever rolled up here, okay? They believe those people are missing something genetically. They believe in blood and soil. They believe in an American version of Aryanism. This is a stupid and perverse and wrong philosophy, of course, but it is what they believe in. They can't articulate it clearly, but they believe in it. Stephen Miller's power as Deputy Chief of Staff is vast. Even during the Signalgate, in Signalgate 1, we saw that they were all these major people, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz, the now former National Security Advisor. They were all cautious, like, what does Stephen Miller think? Stephen Miller said he is a very dark force. He's a very powerful force. And he believes things that you cannot possibly, as an American, embrace. He's the most un-American member of this administration I've seen so far. You know, look, a lot of these guys, I think we all know this by now, they're the usual breed of coward and chucklefuck and dipshit Trump sycophant. They're not dangerous, except insofar as they're sitting at the desks of power. Stephen Miller is a man with dangerous ideas because they are so profoundly un-American. He's talking this week about how schools, first off, I will give Stephen Miller $1,000 to the charity of his choice if he can show me the school system in this country, as he claimed this week, that explicitly promotes communism and teaches children to become communists.
Children will be taught to love America. Children will be taught to be patriots. Children will be taught civic values for schools that want federal taxpayer funding. So as we close the Department of Education and we provide funding to states, we are going to make sure that these funds are not being used to promote communist ideology. So these are a few of the areas in which President Trump has fought the cancerous communist woke culture that was destroying this country.
Schools will teach children to love America. They will teach children to be patriotic. And as we get rid of the Department of Education, no one will be able to teach communism and make children communists. I promise you, you can go to the Berkeley public school system and they're not teaching children to be communists. They're out saying, it's time to seize the means of production, kids. But his ideas are poisonous. They are dangerous. He is one of the most dangerous human beings to walk the earth. He is a man who, when it becomes an accelerating crisis, and again, I go back to what I said earlier, when Trump decided to train wreck the economy, when Trump decided to blow up the economy, there was a moment where Miller in his head thought, oh, good. Because now Trump needs to play to his base. Now Trump needs to keep the base happy. Now Trump needs to tell the base all the time, hey, the real fight isn't the economy. It's getting rid of these immigrants. It's getting rid of these dangerous foreigners. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're raping your children. They're selling you fentanyl. These dangerous moments for Trump are positive moments for Miller because he can convince Trump to do anything. You've already seen them dug in on Albrego Garcia, where Miller is out telling all the obvious lies, where Miller is out, he's a criminal, he's MS-13, he's an international criminal mastermind, all the bullshit. You've seen it, you've heard it, you know what he's doing. But he will be the one in this White House, mark my words, if things go off the rails. If you see these guys not only do warrantless searches, but start rounding up American citizens, if you see them start engaging in broader than they already are human rights abuses and criminality and violations of not only the law and the Constitution, but of fundamental human rights, it will be Stephen Miller pouring that poison in Trump's ear. Trump is a moron and he is evil, but Stephen Miller is not a moron and he is evil. And that, my friends, is why Stephen Miller is now and will remain on the enemies list. Appreciate you listening. You can also catch me on the Lincoln Project podcast. You can catch me every Monday with Molly Jong Fast on the Fast Politics podcast. You can also read me over at Substack and catch me at Lincoln Square as well every Wednesday. And we're doing live streams coming up this week on both my Substack and Lincoln Square. Look forward to seeing you there.